welcome to Ask the Prime Minister. Hi, I'm Dawn Tan. Over the past 2 weeks, you've submitted your questions to the Prime Minister, and in studio today, we have with us Prime Minister Lee, who will answer your questions live. Ask the Prime Minister starts now. Hi, I'm Dawn Tan.
And I'm Nicholas Fang, and we have with us tonight a very special guest, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. PM Lee, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Welcome, PM Lee. PM, it's the third year running after the National Day rally that you're actually coming into the studios live to respond to queries and questions from Singaporeans from all walks of life. In fact, over the past 2 weeks alone, we've had 700 or more questions for you.
And we're talking for the first time to some of our viewers and Singaporeans out there of the very, very young age group. I think the youngest is 8 years old.
That's right, Nick. And in the next hour, of course, we'll be focusing on 3 main areas, bread and butter issues, how our society is evolving, as well as there are some really personal questions for you, PM.
Oh, but we'll save that for just a short while later. PM, let's get straight to the first set of questions. They're on everyday issues. Singaporeans are saying that they're feeling a bit of a strain of competing demands. Miss Eileen Koh, she's a working mother of 3. She works as a consultant, and she says that many Singaporeans are feeling stretched from demanding jobs, long hours, providing families a comfortable life, helping their children cope with a stressful education system, saving for their future, and looking after elderly parents. To what extent is this an issue with our system? Or is it a question of our own priorities in life?
Well, I think people are working hard, and people generally have to work hard. And I can understand, this is Eileen, who sent in this question, because from what you say, she's got 3 young children, she's working, she's trying to juggle a career, a family. And that's one of the toughest things to do, to be a mother and working at the same time. So I can fully understand and empathize with that. But I think that even in our parents' generation, our parents worked very hard. And I think the conditions then probably not better than what conditions we have today. Today we worry about work-life balance. I don't think our parents ever used such a term. Today, as far as housing, as far as children's education, you have to work for it, but you have it, which was not so a generation ago. And I think that tomorrow things can be better, provided we keep on making the effort and provided we work intelligently together.
That's a good point. Some people would say that it was even harder in previous generations. People had big families as well, which we're not seeing so much today.
Yes. I think expectations have changed. In the old days, people had 7, 8, 9 children, sometimes 12. I had, on my mother's side, 10 aunts and uncles. Wow. I didn't, including my mother. And it wasn't so unusual. Today, you have fewer, but you want to give each one of them better. Invest in them, give them the time, give them quality time, give them the upbringing. And so people's expectations have changed, and therefore I think people put more pressure on themselves and on their kids too.
Well, PM, thank you for that. And I mean, we do want everyone to continue to tweet in your questions or call us, give us your questions for PM on all these issues. But we're going to move on to our second set of questions right now. From the more than 700 questions that we've already received, there are some common words that have cropped up. I mean, this can give you a sense of what is on people's minds. I mean, there are words like jobs, pay, CPF, HDB flats, and work as well.
Yes, a common thread in many of the questions was rising costs, PM. One viewer, 29-year-old Tan Junjie, who incidentally is getting married this Sunday, so congratulations to Junjie. Yes, he's an undergraduate, university graduate, sorry, and he writes that young Singaporeans are disgruntled. Their income barely keeps up with the cost of living. Working hard no longer guarantees the Singapore dream of a comfortable life. What would you say to Singaporeans like Junjie who are finding it harder to chase their aspirations today?
Well, I think cost of living is something which is on many Singaporeans' minds, and it's on the government's, our minds too, because we worry about what Singaporeans worry about. And we ask ourselves, what does this mean? How do we explain this and what can we do about it? So if you ask me, have things become more expensive over the years? I would say, yes, they have. Petrol prices go up, electricity prices go up, car prices go up, COEs, medical costs. So if you look at it year to year, I think things do become more expensive.
I think, PM, we actually do have some charts here
And
that we
you
could
have a chart there,
yes,
and it
actually
shows that if you look at the chart, that over the last 10 years, say 2003 to 2013, the cost of things, the consumer prices have gone up by about a third. It's about 31%. But if you look at the red line, I think that's the interesting thing, because that shows how much earnings have gone up over that same period of time.
By 68%.
And it's gone up by more than
60,
double.
yes.
So yes, things have become more expensive, but also incomes have gone up and faster than prices. So actually, Junjie, I think he finds things pricey, but his earning power is better than, say, an undergraduate a graduate just starting work 10 years ago. But what has also changed, of course, is his expectations and his lifestyle. And I think over the last 10 years, people own more air conditioners, more cars, more handphones, more smarter handphones,
Yes.
iPhones, new models, and therefore expenses have gone up.
Yeah,
and I think if you look at some of the data we have, you will see that.
Yes, we have a chart on that as well, on what people are seeking to consume and buy nowadays. We can see for sure that, the things that people are wanting and the type of things are getting better in quality.
Well, you look at it, it's very interesting. Aircons, for example, which I think is the right-hand pair of bars, the most right-hand one.
Yes.
Once upon a time, only maybe a quarter or a third of households would have air cons. Now, 3/4 have air cons, and numbers have been going up. Handphones, nearly everybody has a handphone now. And if you look at the chart, the one pair of bars which has come down is what people call POTS, plain old telephones, the line.
But PM, what
home.
about Chun Sze, who he's having his wedding, it's coming up
Yes.
soon. His expectations are higher. But what would you say to him then about that upcoming wedding?
If he wants the best wedding that he can have.
Well, I think plan your wedding wisely. You're getting married for many years together, I hope. And the wedding is just the start of it. You don't need the biggest bang possible. You want a meaningful occasion which you and your spouse will remember, your bride will remember for many, many years. I just watched a little snippet on BBC of a couple. The husband is 102, the wife is 101, and they've been married 80 years. And they're still in love. They sat side by side, they play cards together, completely compos mentis, and they recall what their wedding day was like. And he said, well, we had a ceremony, we sat down, we had high tea, it was a meal, and we did what people told us. But what made the wedding and the marriage is not the ceremony and the fancy show, but really 80 happy years.
That's right, it's the many, many years of togetherness,
that's what
isn't it?
counts.
Yes.
PM, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We heard recently that Singapore was actually ranked the 6th best place in the world to be born in 2013.
Oh, I thought it was the best.
but this was according to data by the Economic Intelligence Unit. And they use factors like job security, crime rates, GDP per capita. Do you think that we have some way to go before we can also be counted as one of the best places to grow up and grow old in?
I think we are one of the very good places to grow up and grow old in. There are things which we need to do to improve it further. For example, for growing up, we need to improve our preschools. We need better ones and we need them more available. And also infant and child care, so that you can get good care while your mother works if she wants to. And I think we need to get our schools, get the balance between the academics and the character education, as well as the values and physical activities, to get it right. So you're not just slogging away day and night, high pressure all the time. For old people to grow old in, I think we've made a lot of progress. For example, we've got MediShield Life is about to happen. We've got the PG package. We've just distributed all the cards. I think that will ease a lot of the worries of old folks. And we are working on how we can improve the CPF system. So I think there are more things to do yet. There always will be.
Okay.
Well, in fact, we just did something yesterday because we have just improved the lease buyback scheme to make it more flexible and to extend it to 4-room flats. And
certainly having more of that flexibility in society is definitely something that people will be watching, will be looking to the government for. But in addition to questions sent in by SMS, email and by social media as well, PM, we also went out to get questions, to canvass questions as well from members of the public. And here are some of those questions.
Dear PM Lee, you mentioned that we have to have growth in order to look after our people well. What kind of growth and how much of this growth is needed to address the welfare of our people? How can we as Singaporeans contribute to this growth?
So PM, what kind of growth?
I think you want good growth, growth which creates good jobs, growth which makes the most of the skills of our people, growth which many Singaporeans can benefit from. That means growth which comes from new investments, growth which comes from existing companies upgrading themselves and producing better products and more efficiently than before, and growth which comes from people making the most of their education and training, whether they went to ITE, whether they went to poly, whether they went to university, that they have a skill, they are prepared, they have the toughness, they are ready to go. And they have chances to upgrade themselves as they work. Because you've never arrived, you can always learn and improve and do it better tomorrow. And I think that's what we're looking for.
You spoke a little bit about the type of growth, PM. Is there a quantitative amount, a percentage, how much growth do we
Well, we used to make more than 10% a year in the early years when we were taking off very fast, and gradually we slowed down 8% a year, 6% a year. Over the last decade, I think it's been about 6%. I think looking forward, if I can make 2 to 3% a year over the next 10 years, I think that's not bad. I think we have to get used to it. It means that things are not going to click and change overnight, but it means that gradually, steadily, we can make things better year by year.
And what would you say to Aravind, who we just heard asking the question in the video, about how we as Singaporeans can contribute to this growth?
Well, I think study hard and do well in school or in poly or ITE or university. But after you have graduated, don't think that that's the end of your learning.
Yes.
Because that's really the beginning of a journey.
That's right.
And you are 20 plus, you may be working another 40 years, maybe 50, if you're healthy and well and lucky. And there are many things which you will need to learn, some of which have not even been invented in the world. And I think you must have that attitude, that tomorrow the world will be different, and I will be there abreast with it.
That's right. We behave as if education is just sort of a point A to point B.
And ended.
But actually
never
it
so.
carries on, doesn't it? It certainly does. And we actually have a caller on the line right now, Hun Po Chu, who's in her 60s. She wants to talk about the retirement age.
Yes?
Po Chu?
Yes.
Your question for PM, please.
PM.
Hello.
The company that I work for is awaiting the government's direction before they will look into extending our employment. And by that time, I would have been mandatorily retired. Please treat this as an urgent request to expedite the re-employment extension so that we can work till 67 without having to apply for a job at 65. Thank you.
Thank you, Po Chu. How old are you now, if I may ask?
64.
64?
Come January will be 65.
Well,
And I miss the pioneer generation.
oh, that means you are young. But we are working towards helping people to work longer, because we're all living longer and we would like people to work as long as they are healthy and well, because I think that's the best way, not just to upkeep yourself, but also to stay active and fit and connected with your friends. We've pushed the re-employment age to 65. In fact, we've just got there this last year or so. And we would like to go up further. It will take a while for us to be ready to change the law and push it up by law, because I think we need to give a bit of time for companies to get used to the arrangements and to see how they work out. But on a voluntary basis, we very much encourage companies to keep on employing their workers as long as their workers are fit and well and productive, and beyond 65. The government does that very often. Many of our people are well above 65. In fact, my radiographer in SGH, he's 78 years old and he's still going strong. So I hope the company takes that attitude. We are working towards raising the retirement age and the re-employment age, but that may take a few years yet.
All right, thanks, Po Chu, for your question. We've got a tweet coming in now from Teng Chin Meng. He has a tweet on CPF, in fact. So he asks, by allowing people to withdraw up to 20% of their CPF at 65, are we helping the retirees or putting a greater social burden on the future generation? PM?
Well, it may be both. I think we are helping the retirees in a way because some of them may well have urgent needs for money for one reason or other, and I think it is reasonable for them to touch some part of the CPF for this purpose, but they can't do all of it because you must provide for the long term as they grow old. But there is a risk that they will do this too liberally, and when he grows old and he doesn't have any CPF of his own, somebody else will have to support him. It could be his children, it could be the government, it could be he will have to fall back on welfare. But really, we want to make sure that everybody has got at least a basic provided for in the CPF for himself or herself, which is why we said, why I said, well, if you want to, you can take out 20% from the CPF when you're 65 and beyond or later. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. Actually, we should encourage people to put more in. And we had one of the MPs in Parliament, Ms. Foo Mui Ha, made this suggestion, which is quite an interesting one. If you want to let people take it out to be flexible, you really should also be prepared to have people put a little bit more in who want to. We can think about that.
Okay.
All right, well, more than a dozen people want to know if the government can extend the retirement age as soon as possible. We've got Man Lung, who says, my re-employment contract will end in July 2015, and he's concerned about his medical expenses. But he also says, I want to believe that we should not be able to rely on welfare of the government while we have the ability to work, PM?
Yes, so we do, as I said, we do encourage him to continue working, and we encourage his employer to re-employ people like Man Lung. I think for the time being, it needs to be done on a voluntary basis beyond 65. But I can see that as people grow older, and as we get our system worked out and ironed out, we will change the law and we will push it beyond 65. You look at the Australians, they have decided to make the age 70. But they haven't done it today or tomorrow. The 70 takes many years to phase in, and in fact won't happen until 2030, which is a long time from now. But they start moving now, and gradually they will get there. And I think we must take a similar approach.
Right, you mentioned that Australia, and of course United Kingdom as well has something similar in place for 2030 and beyond as well. All right, well, thank you, PM. We need to take a quick break now. Thanks for those who have given us your questions and tweets. So far, we have addressed most of the bread and butter issues such as retirement, cost of living. Do continue to call in, tweet us, and when we come back, here's a taste of what we'll be talking about.
Good evening, Prime Minister Lee. It is very heartening to know that the government is looking beyond paper qualifications, but how will you ensure that this change in mindset actually trickles down to all levels of the Singaporean society?
Welcome back to all our TV viewers and radio listeners. We're coming to you live from the studio with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Now let's talk about how Singapore society is evolving and where we want it to go. What should we really value? PM, here are a couple of questions from two young Singaporeans for you.
Good evening, Prime Minister Lee. It is very heartening to know that the government is looking beyond paper qualifications, but how will you ensure that this change in mindset actually trickles down to all levels of the Singaporean society?
Hi, Mr. Lee. Do you feel that, because of society's heavy emphasis on grades, that parents don't encourage the aspirations of the young since they're not the typical mold of success?
Why is PSLE more important here in Singapore than in other countries?
Wow, very difficult questions.
He looked like he was a little bit worried with the last one. PM, what
Where would
you
you like me to start?
Well, how about Sidesh, our young friend right at the end? Why is PSLE more important here than in other countries?
Well, I thought about that question myself because we have been grappling with the PSLE for a while. And I asked myself, how do other countries do it? And I came up with several answers. In Singapore, the PSLE is important because you use this to know how well you've done in school and also which school you can get into in secondary school. So in other countries which don't have a PSLE, like Hong Kong, which did away with the equivalent of the PSLE, what has happened is that the school examination has become very important. So there's no PSLE, but the school examination is important and pressure is there. In Britain, they also don't have a PSLE. And you go into the secondary school based on two ways. If it's a private school, then it's fixed when you enter primary school and you go all the way up. So primary school admission becomes very important. On the other hand, if it's comprehensive as a government school, then you get into the school not based on exams or where you studied before, but based on where you live. So where you live becomes very important. So we have to choose which way we want to go, and we decided we have a PSLE, we have one good exam, and that decides where you're going in secondary school. But really, wherever you go in secondary school, we work very hard to make sure that every school gives you a good education, so that thereafter you can move on in life. It's not the last time that you have to prove yourself in life. So PSLE is important when you are in P5 and P6, but beyond that, I think other things in life come along.
PM, how stressed were you when you took your PSLE?
I don't remember. I think I studied hard, but I don't even know what...
PM, I remember when I took my PSLE.
I remember I studied hard, but I don't know what grades I got. Because in those days, we didn't even publish the grades.
That's true.
You only know whether you pass or you fail, and which school you get posted to. And we didn't know how to complain.
Don, you remember because you're the youngest of all of us. But PM, we heard earlier from Phyllis as well, and she asked about parents and their aspirations for their children. And we're talking about redefining success beyond the paper chase. How long is it going to take to shift this kind of mindset? What would it actually take?
I think it's moving. There are a wider range of things which people can do, and so students are doing different things in school. They're not all taking a very narrow academic career. If you look at School of the Arts, there's very good participation. Many good students are competing to get into School of the Arts, or into LaSalle, or into the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts. And parents are more open-minded about this. And the sports school is getting good students too. But parents also have a point when they say, do think what you will do after you graduate. Because you have to think long-term, and it is sensible to worry where your next meal is going to come from. So I think we have a balance. If we all go and smell roses, who's going to feed us?
Nobody will be watering the roses.
I tend to think that the future will take care of itself in a way, in that sense, but certainly finding a good job is on the minds of a lot of young Singaporeans. But let's move on from education to jobs, and we've got two calls on the line, actually. The first is from K. Ramakrishna. He's 21. He's a university student. And the second is from John Tan, 34. He is unemployed at the moment, and he's got a question about looking for a job for a poly or IT student.
Let's hear them.
Rama, are you there?
Hi, yeah.
Hi, your question for PM, please.
Hi, good evening, PM, sir.
Good evening.
My question is...
Sorry, are you John or Rama?
I'm Rama.
This is Rama.
Hello, Rama.
Hi.
Yes?
Given that a large aspect of your focus on education is primarily targeting non-degree holders, how do you propose to tackle the issue of an increase in the number of degree holders who are unable to find jobs suited to their qualifications?
Well, as I have tried to explain, I think when you study for a degree, you have to be sure that this is a degree which is, first of all, rigorous, and secondly, something which there is a market demand for. Because if you go to NUS or NTU or SUTD or SMU, these are government universities, and we make sure that the standards are there and that we are training people, right courses, more or less in the right numbers. If you are doing a private degree, then I think you have to be careful, and you have to do your own homework and make sure that you study for a degree which is rigorous, which is valuable, and where there are jobs available. Because we can't say that every certificate, every diploma is worth exactly the same or will be able to guarantee you a job. The employer will look at it and say, well, what does this mean? What did he learn? Does he have a skill? And finally, what counts is what skills do you have? What knowledge do you have? What contribution can you make? How productive are you? And if you have that and your degree has helped you to have that, then I think you'll be okay.
All right, thanks, Rama, for that question. Let's go to John Tan now, who's also on the line. John?
Hi, good evening, PM.
Hi, John.
Hi, sir. I think recently there's some announcement in the change of the civil service, giving equal opportunity for all diploma holders and also degree holders. Myself, being formerly from civil service,
What's your question, John?
I mean, every year the appraisal given was of I was only diploma qualified, and my section managers only repeatedly say that.
Okay, John. So
they can't progress me further.
So you felt there was a glass ceiling based on your qualifications?
Yes.
Okay, PM, how would you answer that?
Well, I don't know about John's specific circumstances, whom he was working for, or what his work performance was. But as a matter of principle, I think when you're working for the government, or indeed for any employer, really it should depend on your performance. And if you're in that job career, and you are working beside a graduate, whether you are a graduate or not should not be so critical as whether you are performing or not. Now, there are some jobs where I must have a graduate. If you didn't have a medical degree, you cannot be a doctor. And if you want to be teaching physics or English in junior college, then you must have a degree which is relevant to that. So that is necessary. But there are many jobs where the degree holders and the non-degree holders will work side by side together. In the SAF, and the Home Team, in the People's Association, nursing, teaching too, particularly in the primary schools. And then I think we must assess people fairly and based on their performance.
And we've heard recently that more is going to be done to ensure maybe a merger of some of the streams.
Yes, and we are looking to see how we can bring more of the career paths together so that it's merged. But I've also had feedback from some non-degree holders. Last week I went to talk to the unions, and one of them raised this point and said, if you put me together with the degree holders, they talk better, they write better, and what about me? Please take care of me. So on the one hand, you want to be the same, on the other hand, you want to be looked after.
Indeed. Well, we thank John very much for that question. PM, I'm going to try to build on that a little bit more. Do you think that we'll see more potential MPs in the future who are Polytechnic and ITE graduates in the next election?
I hope so. We will try very hard to look for them. And whenever we find a good man or a good woman, we will field him. We already have several who have come up this route. Nuruddin is a poly graduate. I think Liang Enghua was a poly graduate. He got a degree later on. Charles Chong is a poly graduate. And we didn't choose them because they were poly graduates or despite their being poly graduates. We just chose them, and they happened to be. And I think that's the way it should be.
And this is a trend that you see that we might see even more in the future?
Well, we are casting our net very wide. And we invite a lot of people to tea.
All right, so let's move on to another way in which society has been clearly, changing. We've seen more diverse groups demanding to be heard or wanting to stake their claims in the more common space. Such fault lines worry this Singaporean.
Dear Prime Minister, diversity can be a source of strength, but at the same time, it can also lead to social conflict. How then does the state intend to deal with emerging tensions, taking into account that diverse interests are represented and the commitment to inclusivity stays on course?
This is a very difficult question. Our society is becoming more diverse. People are expressing themselves more passionately, more assertively, pulling hard, pushing hard, trying to push society the way they prefer. I think the government has got several roles in this. First, we must hold the ring so that you play within the rules of the game. Secondly, we must make sure that there is moderation and restraint, because if you go beyond a certain limit, I think in a multiracial, multi-religious society, you're going to have very serious tensions and strains and problems. Thirdly, I think we must be able to set the culture in order to moderate strains, not just along the traditional fault lines, race and religion, but also, I think, new fault lines which can come. I think they can be on values, culture wars. I think there's a very strong difference in views between those who are gay activists and those who are anti the gay lifestyle in Singapore, and both sides are pushing. You have the Pink Dot movement, you have other people who describe themselves as pro-family. We have differences in views between and in interest, perhaps, between those who are Singapore citizens and have been for some long time and those who are new citizens. And we have to bridge those differences. We could easily have differences between different social classes. Working class, people who are well off, people who have inherited wealth. And I think we have to set a tone where everybody converges to a middle and not have politics where I represent this group, you represent that group, and let me get what I can and you will fight for what you can, which I think would be very bad for Singapore.
Do you think the recent NLB case that involved the pulling of the book titles from the children's section, do you think that was an illustration of some of these tensions?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, it's not the only one, and I'm sure it's not the last one. There will be these incidents coming up from time to time, and each time I think different groups will get engaged. But we have to see it in perspective. We are never going to be single-valued, single-cultured Singapore. I mean, we are diverse, as the questioner says. That's one of our strengths, provided we can have the diversity moderated and not pull us apart.
There's a question from Rohana. She wrote in to say, seeing as how this is part of our society, is Singapore and the government ready for this?
Well, you have to be. The world is changing. You're getting social media is changing the way we communicate, the way issues come up, the way we can have emotions engaged. And we have to cope with it, whether we like it or not. I mean, if I say we're not ready, well, which way do we go? We have to be ready.
Do you actually distinguish between those voices in the physical space and online? Does it make a difference if they're gathering in numbers?
In principle, no, it's the same thing. Online, it can happen faster. In person, of course, you can have physical upheaval, violence. If you have a riot, it can go out of control. If the Little India riot had not been well handled, that could have been troublesome. So I think we have to watch both the physical space as well as online.
All right, and on that note, we're going to have to go for another break. You are watching Ask PM Live, and we're going to take more calls-ins and tweets as well. We have had an exciting exchange with PM on his take on bread and butter issues, how society is evolving, and now when we come back, Singaporeans have questions for the Prime Minister on what it's like to be him. Welcome back. You're watching Ask the Prime Minister. Thanks for the tweets and call-ins that you've been sending in. For the majority of the questions relating to everyday life and society, we have addressed most of them with the Prime Minister in the earlier sessions, and now we're going to move on to some questions on the PM himself. And first off, we have a call that's come in from Anwar Saleh. He's 26 years old, and he's a father-to-be in a few weeks' time, PM. Anwar, are you there?
Congratulations, Anwar.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hi. Sir, can you share some parenting tips on your role as a husband and a father? How do you try to balance your time between your work, your family, and your other external commitments? I mean, as a father, what important life lessons or philosophies do you impart to your children, especially in the areas of education, moral behavior, and planning for their future? Thank you, sir.
Well, it starts very young because a child starts as a baby, and you must start by learning how to change the nappies and feed the baby and burp the baby. I'm sure you will learn.
I think he wants to know whether you change diapers.
Yes, I did. And in those days, we used safety pins. So you have to be very careful not to poke the baby. But as the child grows up, you have to be there with them, with him or her, his friend, his guide, but also his role model, so that he will watch you, he will do what he sees you doing, and you want him to think well of you, and you want him to think well of you, and you want him obey you, but to love and respect you. And I think that if you spend time with them and talk to them and engage them with your wife, of course, I think you will be all right. It comes naturally. You just have to try a little bit hard.
PM, what's the one word of advice you would give to Anwar, given that he's going to become a father soon? Besides, be careful with the safety pins.
I think it's a very trying time for your wife. When the baby is born with a new baby, I think she will need your full support.
Support your wife. That's very good advice there.
All right, so let's hear what a group of primary school kids really want to know about PM, the man himself. Let's watch.
Dear PM Lee, what was your ambition in your school days, and what will you be if you weren't the Prime Minister?
If you could be any superhero in the world, who would you be? Why? I would like to ask if there will ever be a female Prime Minister. Can I be one?
Very tough question.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Ying Xuan, who asked about your ambitions when you were in school.
Well, when I was 8 years old in primary 3, I once wrote an essay in school, and I said, well, I hope one day when I grow up, I'll be an aeroplane pilot. And I'll be able to fly the aeroplane and have full control of all the instruments in the cockpit. And every time I go onto an aeroplane, I take a peek in the cockpit and wonder what it would be like.
And if you weren't PM, is that what you think you would be in the end?
Well, perhaps I would learn to fly as a hobby.
Okay.
Do you have a drone, perhaps, one of those?
I have seen them, but I think they're harder to fly than you think.
I've been told that it can be quite simple, actually. Let's have a go.
Well, perhaps it's idiot-proof enough for me.
On the question of flying, is that part of the superhero that you would want to be if you could be one?
Well, my superheroes date me. When I was growing up, we had cartoons, newspaper cartoons and comics, and we didn't have that many TV shows even. So my heroes would be Superman and Tarzan.
Oh.
I used to read Batman too, but I didn't like him so much. I thought Superman was more fun.
Tarzan's apparel is very good for Singapore's weather.
Oh, yes. And then came my children, and I had fun with them, and they had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were quite powerful. But when it comes to this generation with the Transformers, I don't know one Transformer from another.
Don, yours?
Yes. No, I was going to say, PM, that I like the fact that you didn't even pause when you said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I remember them. There are 4 of them.
That's right. Can you name one?
No.
And what about Stacey's question about a female PM someday?
Yes, absolutely. Why not? We have women doing well in many careers. They go to school, they do well, they go to university, they do well. In fact, there are more girls than boys in the university, I think, in Singapore. And in careers, they do well. There are engineers, bankers, lawyers, there are technicians, you have CEOs. We have MPs, we have ministers. Why shouldn't we have an MP, a PM? I hope you will be one day.
We will wish Stacey all the best in that endeavour. But staying on politics, PM, you've mentioned in the past that there is plans for you to hand over the reins by 2020. Are we still on course for that? Has the timeline changed? What would
Well, I said I shouldn't still be the PM when I'm 70 years old. I think that's still my objective. We have a team of young ministers. I think they're all good and promising, and I am sure in time from amongst them a leader will emerge. And we hope that in the next election I will bring in more people and we will reinforce the team.
Okay, we have a question from Melvin, who asked whether a new PM in the making. It sounds that there seems to be one. But what kind of leaders would Singapore need in the future, do you think?
I think you need leaders who are dedicated, who are totally committed to Singapore and to their responsibilities, and who are capable not just of solving problems, but of persuading people that this is the way we should go in order to solve our problems and in order to build a better Singapore. And you need to be a bit of a showman, you need to be a bit of a doctor, you need to be a bit of a psychologist so you can get people to go along with you and understand how people think. You also have to be a hard-headed person who knows, well, these are things we need to do. Let's do them in the best way we can.
Wow. Wonder whether Stacey still wants to be PM now when she grows up. Yeah.
Yes, no, I mean, do we have, I think we have Tan Chik San actually, a tweet, I believe. Tan Chik San is 79 and he's tweeted to say, our space constraints have always been a challenge and we have seen many innovations, for example, Jurong Island. How do you see us expanding this physical space in the future?
Oh, I think we are trying many ways. It's one of those things where we keep on thinking that we run out, then we think of a clever idea and you can push it a little bit further. And the Jurong Caverns, which we just opened earlier this week, I think are a very smart idea to put underground. Things which if you put above ground would take up a lot of space and a lot of valuable land. And there are other things which you can put underground. I mean, we have ideas for putting plants underground, factories. We've got ideas for putting other storage spaces, particularly in the parts of the island where we've got solid rock caverns, solid rock formations. And so we will explore that further. Even above ground, we've got ideas. I mean, for example, I talked about Paya Lebar last year and how if you move Paya Lebar Air Base to Changi and redevelop Paya Lebar Air Base, you've got space there. And not only there, but all around the air base, where now the aeroplanes come in and take off. And therefore, buildings have to be constrained to a certain height. Now the height constraint is off, I can redevelop. And in effect, I can have a whole new town, whole new city on the eastern part of Singapore. And this year I talk about Jurong and how we can do the Jurong Lake District and the area around that. And I think reclaiming space which we have used and using it in a different and better way in future, I think there are a lot of things you can do.
I think I recently heard that we are thinking of putting some driverless vehicles underground potentially.
Yes, we are going to try that too, and I think that will come sooner than people think because the technology is advancing very rapidly. And if you have driverless vehicles, you may not need to own your own car. You just call up one, it comes, you get in, and then it takes you to your destination.
Own personal MRT, I believe.
And you don't have to park.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, we have an interesting live tweet that's just come in. I believe it's from Nina. She asks, due to limited land space, do we sacrifice historical sites for economic development? Can our history still be preserved?
Yes, it can be. We have to choose each time. We cannot keep everything undisturbed, but important things we have to keep. And we have done that in Chinatown, we've done that in Little India, we've done that in the Civic District. We preserve many buildings, and I think we will continue to do that. But from time to time, we will have to make tough choices, and we have to find ways in which we can have the best of both worlds. And we have to build in Bukit Brown, but we could raise the road onto viaduct, so that you disturb fewer graves, and I think there's less impact on the environment.
Right. Okay. The future certainly is a very big, wide open space to work with, isn't it? But as we all look to the future, here are a couple of questions for you, Prime Minister.
Dear Prime Minister Lee, what do you think Singapore will be like in 10 years' time when I'm 19 years old? And what should I do to make Singapore a better place?
What is yours and our government's new narrative for Singapore in the next 50 years? Rather than the 5 Cs, can the 5 Gs of being gracious, green, giving, grounded and grateful be the new narrative that makes Singapore a more connected society?
Well, in 10 years' time, I hope you'll see a Singapore which has changed from what it is today. If you rewind 10 years ago and look at what Singapore was then, whether you're looking at Punggol, there was no waterway. You're looking at Marina, there was no gardens by the bay. If you look at, I do not know. If you look at Yishun, there was no Khoo Teck Puat Hospital. Today we have them. 10 years' time, there'll be new towns, there'll be new homes, there'll be new gardens. I hope the Jurong Lake Gardens will have come up. We will have new things elsewhere in Singapore too, which we perhaps have a time to talk about later. And I think it is important also to have the 5 Gs in Singapore, which you talk about being gracious, being green, being
giving,
grounded. These personal qualities of the people, because what makes an outstanding society isn't just the buildings and the assets we have, the things we have, but the way we are, what sort of people we are, how we treat one another, how we treat visitors and others and other people in the world. And you need to be gracious and green and giving. And at the same time, we need to be able to be tough and practical and successful and able to work together. And I think what you can do as a student is to study hard, but not just study what's in the books, but also to spend some time and energy to see what's happening in Singapore, to go around Singapore, to work with people outside your family in the community. There's the CIP community immersion programs in the schools. Spend time working with needy people, spend time working with the elderly, get to know one another. And then when you grow up, all those friends, all those contacts, all those memories, and that's what will make you a good Singaporean.
I'm going to ask a little bit follow-up on what Shee Hong said. He actually wrote a bit more. He's an engineer who took a big pay cut to go to work with a social enterprise.
Yes.
And he's asked about the new narrative for Singapore.
Yes.
Is it going to be the 5 Gs? Is it going to be more than that?
I think you have to have a sense of pride in what we have achieved, but also a sense of humility to know that we are a small country in the world and that we have a responsibility to help our children enjoy a better life than we do. And I think that we are in a position to do that. So what is the narrative? This is a place where Singaporeans can fulfill their human spirit. A place which is open, where we are open to new ideas, and yet we have a sense of where we came from, and we haven't forgotten how we got here.
Okay, PM, maybe one final question for you. You've touched a little bit earlier about what you mentioned in the NDR last year, which is the developments in Changi, Project Jewel, and this year, of course, the massive redevelopment in the Jurong Lake District. What more can we look forward to in terms of projects of this scale?
Well, there was one more project which I was going to talk about in the National Day rally, and then I decided to balance my speech and I saved it for another occasion. But we've been working on it, and it's not just Jurong or Changi or Tanjong Pagar which we are working on, but there's another project which we have in mind for Mandai. And we hope that it will be ready sometime in the not too distant future to be fleshed out and developed. And we have an idea to make the Mandai Zoo much, much better.
Better?
Yes.
Or bigger? Because obviously there's a lot of space around there.
There's space outside of the nature reserve. We have old orchid plantation. We had an old fruit orchard. They are not used now. There's a place the land is available. I think it's next to the nature reserve. If you can extend the zoo to those parts, I think it'll be very interesting.
So that's actually on the cards, an extension perhaps of the zoo?
It's not just, you could say it's an extension, but really we have in mind something bigger and better.
Could you share with us some?
And you want something which is green, you want something which improves on what is there, you want something which will enhance the nature reserves and not infringe into the nature reserves. And I think we have some interesting ideas. For example, the bird park is all by itself down in Jurong. Why not move it to where the zoo is?
Wow, so it looks like we're talking potentially of a mega nature and wildlife type of project.
Well, you want to have an attraction which is like Gardens by the Bay. So it's not just a place where you go and see something, the animals, or the Gardens by the Bay, you go into the domes. But you also have public areas where you can wander around and you can go and take wedding pictures. And you can enjoy the waterfront and watch the sunset on Upper Seletar Reservoir.
Wow.
I think it can be a very beautiful, very nice place.
It sounds almost like a resort. It sounds like I might want to stay overnight in a place like
perhaps.
that. But would this just purely be an attraction for visitors, or are we going to do something in terms of educational elements of nature, of wildlife in this?
Oh, I hope that it will be educational as well, because it's like the science center. It's entertaining, it's fun, but at the same time, people who go there, we want them to learn something. And I think there's a lot of room for that in an expanded Mandai Zoo.
Wow, so it'll be a project that has entertainment.
It's like the Botanic Gardens. You go to the Botanic Gardens, it's very beautiful, but actually they do a lot of scientific work.
Yes, there's historical curation and also look into the future.
There are many samples and specimens, and students go there and learn all sorts of things.
When do you think this project might actually take off?
I think within the next, by 2020, we should see something, and beyond that, we should have even more. This is not so complicated to do as moving Paya Lebar Air Base to Changi. So within the next 10 years, we should have quite a lot to see.
But have the animals been told?
The animals have very good hearing. Little birds tell me.
Little birds will be moving as well. Yeah.
I hope if they do move it, they're going to move the waterfall as well at Jurong Bird Park.
I think they have something in mind which is even more spectacular than the waterfall.
Wow. Okay. Lots to look forward to.
But I think you want to do it in such a way that it is green, that it preserves the environment, and that it enhances the nature reserve. And I think we can do that.
Okay.
We've been talking to some of the nature groups, so I'm sure that as they understand what's happening, they'll help us to refine and to improve the scheme.
Okay. Well, PM, we're looking ahead, and since we're talking about the future, and we're celebrating 50 years of independence next year, as you look to the future, what worries you most about the future of Singapore?
We are a small country. We used to say we were a sampan. Now, perhaps you're not a sampan. You're a boat, safer than before. You've got a motor. You're self-propelled. But the seas are unpredictable. The storms can come. And I worry whether we will be strong enough to hold together over the next 50 years. We have come here. We didn't expect to come this far. For the next 50 years, we hope to go as far. And we must try very, very hard, but we must have that resolution, that determination. We will do it, because things can go wrong, and we must be prepared for that.
And resilience as well.
Yeah, you must have that steel in you. Well, I planned for this. I was hoping that things would turn out. Things didn't quite turn out. Well, we have to take that setback, and we have to move on. And we have to move on together. If we don't move on together, then we will be in serious trouble.
Okay.
So flexibility certainly being important as we go forward as well. So I just like to let you know that we've had over 700 questions from all walks of life, but we also had 400 live tweets and call-ins, questions as well that have come in online
in the course of this show.
In the course of this program. But on that note, we have to thank you, PM Lee, for spending this time with us, for sharing this time and your insights with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you as well for joining us tonight, especially to those of you who called in, sent your questions, tweets, and all of those comments. The more than 700 questions received, they surrounded many recurring themes, from everyday cares of Singaporeans to the uncertainties of tomorrow. We've managed to address quite a good number of them.
And we were very lucky as well to get some very interesting personal insights and anecdotes into PM himself. I think we'll definitely remember your choice of heroes.
Tarzan. Now, if you'd like to watch this program again, you can do so online. The addresses are on your TV screen right now. But for now, it's good night from Nicholas and myself. Take care.
Bye-bye.